Welcome to another Digital Anarchy tutorial. I'm Jim Tierney, President of Digital Anarchy, and this tutorial we're going to talk about how to preview in Invigorator. Now normally in Invigorator there is no way to actually, if you have a complex Photoshop document like we have here with a whole bunch of different layers and a background and all this stuff going on, there's really no way to preview your Invigorator object against all this stuff. So if I go into Invigorator, you can see that I'm able to preview the object, but the background is just transparent. And this is because Invigorator pulls in the layer that you apply Invigorator to. So in this case, I've applied it to a transparent layer, so it just pulls in the transparent background. And this isn't very useful to us if we're trying to composite this with the rest of our Photoshop file. So let's cancel this. So what we're going to do is actually make use of the history palette, and we're going to come in here and merge all of our layers. So we're going to have one single layer, and we're going to apply Invigorator to that. And what you're going to see happen is that Invigorator is going to pull in that background. We can now move the object around to kind of get it exactly where we want to place it. And then just click OK. You can see that we've already set up the text here and the 3D camera rotation and all that good stuff. So I'm not going to go into that too much. I mean, obviously we can move things around. We can rotate it a little bit if we want. You can do all the stuff you normally do in Invigorator. But the key thing to notice is that we now have that background behind us. So we can see what our Invigorator object is going to look like in our Photoshop file. And so once we get it all set up, let's click OK. And this will render it back out into Photoshop onto that background layer. Now that's not really useful. We would really like to keep all of our objects as separate layers in our Photoshop file. So what we're going to do is go to our history palette, and we're going to delete not only the Invigorator instance, but we're going to delete the merge visible. And this is going to get us back to our Photoshop file with all of the layers. Now you can see that I've got this blank Photoshop layer just sitting here waiting for Invigorator to be applied to it. But the really nifty thing is, if we go up to our filter menu, you can see that the last applied filter is 3D Invigorator. And it's really important to remember that when you apply the last applied filter from the filter menu, you can either use Command F or I think it's Control F on the PC. It's going to apply that filter with all of the same settings as the last time you applied it. And so that means that everything that we set up in Invigorator when we were previewing against the merged background is now going to be applied to this new layer. So I can just hit Command F or Control F or come up to the filter menu and just grab that last applied filter. And it's going to keep all of the arrangements that we set up when we were dealing with a merged background, but now it's going to apply it to a separate layer. And so that's going to allow us to keep all of our Photoshop layers. And you can see that the Invigorator text is now on its own separate layer, which we can move around if we want. But that shouldn't be necessary because we've already seen how Invigorator looks against the merged Photoshop file. And so everything's set up, and now all you need to do is come up and do that apply last filter. So this is really kind of a quick and easy way of getting around the fact that there's no way to preview a complex multi-layered Photoshop file within Invigorator. In fact, you can only preview it against the layer that you're applying it to. So making use of the history palette is a really nifty way of getting around that limitation. And of course this works with less complex stuff. So if you have a photograph or something and you want to apply Invigorator to it, but you want to see what the Invigorator object is going to look like against the photograph, again you can just apply it to the photograph, set everything up, click OK, render it out, undo that, and then create a new layer. So let's go into that and take a look at how to do that. So here I've got an image of breakfast in bed. And we're going to apply Invigorator to that. Go to the filter menu, go to Zaxworks, and go to 3D Invigorator. And of course I'm going to want new and different text for this. So we'll edit the text and say breakfast. And that should be enough for that. And we'll click OK. And we can see how that looks, and we're going to change this around a little bit. We're going to make some adjustments. We're going to zoom out on our text. Move things around just slightly. And maybe come in here and apply a slightly different texture to it. And so that more or less gives you an idea of what we're trying to do. We're just trying to show the fact that you can preview against this layer, set everything up. We'll click OK. It'll render back out to Photoshop. And in this case, the 3D Invigorator text is going to be on the photograph itself, which is really not what we want. We want the text as a separate layer that we can manipulate in other ways. And so now that that's rendered, that's great. We can see that it's placed exactly the way we want it. The texture has been changed. But again, it's still applied to the photograph. And if we turn this off, well, actually, it's a background layer, so we can't do anything with it. But if we turn this into a normal layer, and then we turned it off, you would see everything disappears all at once. So that's not really what we want. We can undo in this case. So I will get rid of this Invigorator layer. We'll undo that. And so now that we've gotten rid of it, we can just create a new layer and just go back in and again apply that last filter. And when we do that, it'll render it out with all of the same settings that we just created, with the new texture, the new orientation, the new text. It's not going to use the same stuff that we use for the stars composition. And then once that's rendered, with all those same settings, it's now on its own separate layer. So we can turn it on and turn it off. We can move it around if we want to make some further adjustments or something like that. So again, it's just a very quick and easy way of creating a preview within Invigorator, which you wouldn't normally be able to do. And so this allows you to see the background layer, either a photograph or a complex Photoshop document, and set everything up, with that in the background. But then once you apply it and undo it, then you can just apply that last filter to the new layer and have the Invigorator object on its own separate layer. So that's it. I hope you found this informative, and hope it's improved the way you can work with 3D Invigorator. Check out digitalanarchy.com for more tutorials and more information about Invigorator, as well as a free trial download. And thanks for joining me.